just like that, we're live. So
We are live.
we don't do real super formal openings. I should probably quit saying that because I feel like I say that a lot of times now. But we are back in the booth. It's been a little while. Obviously, a lot of busy schedules and interesting things going along the world here. But today I'm flying solo. JC is out on assignment, and by that I mean he's on a boat somewhere in Maine. So, we're gonna.
To be.
Yeah, right. There's fishing and boating and stuff like that. So not a bad gig. But we have on the show today. We have Dan Palacios. Dan works down in Florida. His company is called Kinetically. And Dan has a pretty interesting dynamic, and we're going to kind of get in and let him tell a lot more about himself. Super excited. I met Dan at the Ubrizati conference down in Florida, and just was pretty impressed by a lot of things. Number one, I think we're going to talk today about growing a brand. We're going to talk about kind of some things that he's involved with, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about the farm down there. You got a pretty cool setup. So, Dan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. I really appreciate you bringing me on. It was really, for me, an honor to have met you at the Ubrizati conference there. That's, I've been talking to those guys for a long time and always seen their tough treadmills. And I'm an equipment junkie and a techie guy when it comes to that stuff. So it's something that I always wanted to be able to go and play around with, having seen Donnie Bigham and those guys playing around with it all the time. So coming full circle to meeting you and having heard of you for so long from the tactical world, and finding out you did so much more, and just being able to actually listen to you was a real treat for me, because even though I can give off the appearance that I've been doing this for a really long time, my tenure in the training world is actually quite short compared to most of you guys. I've been faking it till I make it for a really long time. So it's cool to be able to connect with guys like you and see that it's doing something.
Well, I would say you're past the faking it stage. So, no, it was pretty cool. That event in itself was just awesome. Bo and Dario invited me to come down, and I was fortunate because we were in the middle of our season with the Mammoth and the lacrosse team, and it just so happened to fall when we had a weekend off. And although a lot of times I don't like to fill my off weekends because there's so very few, I wanted to jump at that opportunity, and it was well worth it. I mean, between yourself and guys like J.L. Holdsworth and like you mentioned, Donnie, and just a whole host of kind of a new network of people, and I think that that's a good place to really start, because from the Landmine University guys and Junior and just David Weck, and it was just an awesome weekend. And I had this feeling like, man, I wish we had like 3 or 4 more days of this. And then you roll up, and to set the scene, this is like you said, the first time that we had met, and Dan comes backing into the facility, and he starts unloading a car as if we're about to have a garage sale. And he just starts unloading all of these toys and things that he's involved in. He's got this rack that attaches to, the trailer hitch, and he just starts, a playground kind of ensues. And more importantly was just kind of seeing the breadth of the things that you've kind of molded your model around. And I want to kind of start there a little bit, which is, you've worked just tirelessly to try and create exposure to small companies, to create exposure to the training world, to tools and utilities and modalities and things like that exist. And since then, you and I have had an opportunity to kind of make some other further introductions with some things, which obviously have been awesome. And so just kind of talk about, like, how did that start for you? What was your, did you have a vision, like, this is the road that I'm leading to, and to where you kind of are today with some of this stuff?
Yeah. So, it all stemmed for me from working in the traditional strength conditioning world, and working with a lot of young athletes, older athletes, traditional athletes, non-traditional athletes of all different kinds, working for another facility at the time. That was about 5 years into having started my personal training and strength conditioning career. And, what I started to realize, and I said this at the conference at the time, was that I felt like the traditional strength conditioning world was just a little bit too restrictive. And what I identified was it really just had a lot to do with a lack of tools, number one, right? Lack of innovation in the actual physical objects that we use to train with. It boiled down to bands, barbells, and dumbbells ultimately. And there was so much more starting to come out at that time. This was really around 2016, 2017, where I first saw the WEC Method RMT Club, and started to see Chris Duffin swinging around the shoulder rock. And what I had realized was that there was a lot of restrictive mentality when it came to the way that orthopedic surgeons, physical therapists, and even strength conditioning coach were approaching those types of methods of training, right? And it's, swinging the club and swinging it in different patterns and, using dynamic resistance and more neuromuscular coordination to create a more dynamic environment for the shoulder to develop and become stronger, right? We were still doing all the different regular shoulder patterns with the bands, and all that stuff is great. But what I started to realize was that there was an active resistance to the potential of exploring these other options. So it was really, for me, full circle to come back to an event like Uberzati and actually, have David Weck there and all these guys who I had been paying attention to who inspired me to embark out on this process of creating kinetic training and the live kinetically mindset and all that comes along with that. What I wanted to do when I started the process was, number one, create a platform that would allow other coaches to feel empowered to embark out and try new modalities, new methodologies, and new techniques for getting their clients across the finish line on their rehab, on performance, on, achieving a certain goal, whatever that was. I didn't see as much efficiency in certain methods and modalities as there were with the new things that were coming out. So my whole goal was to lock in on any one particular tool or modality and help to educate coaches on how to better distill that information down to the client level, right? And make it seem simple and accessible to be able to use a new tool for just about anyone, right? Whether you're just trying to look better and, be fit, or you're actually trying to use that tool to perform on the field or on the court or in the tactical realm. That was really my main goal, is what's going to be the best tool for that person at that given time that's going to not only be effective, but also help them connect with it, right? Because there's some people who just, for one reason or another, can't connect with what a dumbbell does for you or a barbell does for you. But if they want to swing that club around for 12 hours a day and it's going to make them better, then that's probably the best tool for them right here, right now, right? And it really started to open up a lot of doors. It was crazy what happened in the next 3.5 years. I left that gym. I wasn't working for them anymore. I started training at a place called Rienzi Strength Conditioning right around the corner from where I am now. And, that was a really cool opportunity because it was training out of the Rocks trainers facility. And, being around them, I was able to also see the promotional value of what education brings to the table, right? These guys were showing really high-level training techniques in Under Armour commercials. And I thought, well, this is a niche that no one's touching, right? How can we effectively educate and promote at the same time, right? Because when you put any video, suddenly you're getting people scratching their heads going, well, what's that? What is he training? What's Dwayne training with right there, right? What's that barbell he's using? Where does that come from, right? So I wanted to put a microscope on that concept and go, okay, here's the barbell he's using, here's why he's using it, and here's why it's more effective than any other barbell that you're using. And that just kind of branched out into all the other stuff. So it really was a cool process of being able to lend my knowledge as a strength conditioning coach and my creativity just as a person who wants to explore training more. And then just deliver that in a way that people can understand it and connect with it and see entertainment value to it as well, right? It's just more entertaining to want to connect with training at a level when it's fast paced, when you're watching it on Instagram. It's a platform that everybody wants to, engage in now. And it's led me to some really, really fun, interesting places, like eventually meeting guys like you and David and JL. And, these are people who I've been learning from just online for the last few years. And now suddenly I get to connect with them in an impactful way and have a direct line and conversation with those people who have so much more knowledge than me in so many different ways, that now I can actually connect the dots on these different methodologies and techniques and modalities that I've been working with and go, okay, yeah, if a guy who's got 20 years on me sees value to this, I know I'm on the right track. And it's a very validating process when you get to see it that way,
Sure. No, and that's awesome. I think, as you're kind of talking there's a few things that, kind of popped up in my head, which is, I think as, whether you're in general personal training, whether you're a strength conditioning professional, regardless of where, your level of clientele lies and who you're working with, if you value, growing, I think that there's an interesting dynamic with a lot of this stuff. And I think I've kind of really explored some of these things too, where just like yourself, I'm watching what other people do, I'm reading stuff, and a lot of times what you're doing is you're kind of going through this process of, as you said, validating some things, number one, which is, does this work for me? Is this, a way of training that I see could be useful to the people that I work with, regardless of who that is? And I think that there's a really interesting dynamic in there, because I'm sure, and there's a question that I'm getting to, a couple of them, as you go through that process and now in the position you're in, where I think based on your, level of visibility, I think you have, 100,000+ followers on Instagram and things like that. And we'll get to that, because I want to talk about, how some of those things came to be. But, I think there's part of this process too, where, I always kind of use the analogy of the Bruce Lee approach, which is, absorbing that which is useful and rejecting that which is not. And, I think that as we as professionals go through this process, as we're continually looking at things and saying, okay, is this tool something I could use? Is it, viable? Is there a way with which I can integrate this and it can be beneficial or helpful to me? At the same time, based on how our world is, which is everyone wants the newest and latest and greatest, are you expanding an envelope where, I think you have to try and be as leading edge as you can possibly be, and then also being somewhat cautious in that process, where you go, yeah, there's some things that are out there that I'm like, I don't think that's for me, or maybe it's not for me right now, or I don't see the connection between what that tool is and maybe where it applies, or maybe it doesn't at all. How has that been for you? Because I'm sure that now, fast forwarding to where you sit today, there has to be things that you've come across where you're like, yeah, I don't think that thing is going to be as good as what they're claiming it is, or I don't see the connection or value. Like, how's that process for you to ensure that you are, putting things out there, because everyone's critical, and, the keyboard warriors and things like that. And I want to talk maybe as we get into that side of the fence a little bit later, but talk to me about that in terms of your process. And as you look at things and people put products in front of you, where do you go about that before you say, okay, I'm willing to put my stamp on this thing, and I'm going to show you how I use it, and find, ways that people can maybe see this thing in a light that they can find, maybe applicable to their setting?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's one of those things. So many of those things I have gone out of my way to find on my own. And really that process looked more like, okay, what are all these different sort of categories of training types, training applications, and various tools, modalities, and methods that are going to fit a certain bill for these categories. Once I kind of covered all the different realms where I thought I found the best, or the, at least for right now, most effective tool in that realm. That was where I really started to get just a lot of different companies coming to me and bringing their ideas and, asking for calls on think tanking their products and kind of troubleshooting them. And yeah, it definitely is a process where you have to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff, right? And not get lost in all there is out there. But
yeah,
I like to really keep an open mind as much as I possibly can when I'm looking at a new tool and go, okay, what is good about this and what needs maybe some innovation or some alteration to make it viable, make it useful. And I really try not to approach any of the situations where people bring me something where I don't see it has as much value in a context of total rejection. Just maybe here's how you should think about altering this so that it has more application across the board. Here's how just be better, right? You're not using the right materials. I've learned a lot about the process of manufacturing and materials and what that looks like in the context of the current world economic issues that are involved. And I try to approach looking at those products from that perspective of here's why it is good, here's why it is useful, here's some things you can change about it, and here's where I see it fits into the continuum of the category that it tends to sit in, or these categories that it kind of plays across. And that's what I tend to think about most of the products, right? There's a continuum when it comes to training. There's a progression when it comes to training. Here's how it can be used on its own as an individual tool, and here's how it can be integrated with other tools to make this particular method or this particular application more potent, more efficient, more effective, and more importantly, more fun for the client, right?
100%.
They see the challenge in it, or they feel connection to the movement they're trying to learn faster, right? And if I can make that person immediately feel that because I'm working those two tools together, then I've done a good job, right?
Right.
As a strength conditioning coach, it's my job to help someone really understand and feel movement within their own body and be able to apply that more efficiently and effectively. And if that tool seems to do that in combination with another tool or on its own, then we've had a good training session,
Yeah, and I think there's some things there that I really can kind of assimilate with, and even just in the context of me talking with some of our younger coaches, and when I get new students and interns and things like that come in, and I try to get them to expand how they think about training from a very simplistic perspective, and that is that I've always said, don't think about muscles, think about movements. And, the body and the human system is such a dynamic system in that we work and play and do things on a daily basis that aren't static, that don't just exist specifically in sagittal plane. And I think that's something that I always say this when I present and things like that. And I'm like, listen, if your training exists in one plane, your people, whoever they are, regardless of what their goal is, level is, or whatever else, are more than likely not going to see tremendous results unless you're just your main focus is to be aesthetically pleasing, which that's okay in its own right. But at the end of the day, when realistically you look at things, I'm always training in a manner where I want people to move through all planes. I want to have a lot of different tools in order to kind of extrapolate and expand that window. And much to your point, if I have more tools to be able to provide them with in order to get that done, then I also take one other step to the good, if you will, which is then it allows you to also create variety. It also allows you to create to combat staleness, where I think that, as you mentioned, the traditional weight room of barbells and dumbbells and some bands and maybe a cable machine, really kind of limit some of that. And I think when I watch a lot of the things that you do and the tools that you use, it just opens this whole world of opportunity where, as you mentioned, you can get people to move differently. You can get people to add resistance in a lot of different ways with some of these tools. And to me, if you provide that environment for folks, they're going to want to keep coming back, as you said, because they're going to enjoy the experience. They're going to show up every day, and not that, we always joke like, oh, today's about muscle confusion, stupid commercialized BS that nobody, that most of us kind of laugh at and things like that. But I'm like, we're going to give you a complete spectrum of things and tools that combat those things, and at the same time gives us, the professionals, the ability to have some creativity towards that. So, I can't agree with that much more. What's some of the things that, you're working on right now that maybe, are yet to come, or things that you found here recently that you think are some of the cooler pieces that you're starting to kind of push out there?
Oh yeah, certainly, for me, like you said, it's a lot of it has to do with combating the staleness, right? Because I tell people this all the time. You're doing the same basic movement patterns, just with different tools. Whether it's a band, it's a barbell, it's this thing or that thing. Pick up a water bottle and swing it around like this, or curl it like this, but move daily, right? So all these different tools that we're working with are just giving you the opportunity to play with those movement patterns in different directions and in different ways, and just continue to connect with those movement patterns so that you become more efficient, more effective, and more effective and more proficient in how you move. You move in all kinds of different ways on a daily basis, and usually it's the ways that you don't move consistently that are going to cause you problems, and we want to try to replicate those. So for me, one of the really big ones that I've been working with a lot lately, I'll show you right here, is the rope flex system.
Yeah.
So that's a magnetic climber, and when you pull the rope, that magnetic resistance is resisting you throughout the entire pattern, but it's got an adjustable rack system here where you can slide that up and down. So you're working from low to high, you're working from, middle to back, and you're working from top to bottom, and it just gives you the opportunity to work all those movement patterns and those gripping patterns, right? Those fascial integrations that you want to have that,
Right.
Wet talks a lot about. Why
Right.
it's so important to work the hands with the connection with the ground. And so you've also got this guy right here, also a rope flex piece, the Spartan climb, right? And it's working at this really crazy aggressive angle, right?
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
So that can be shifted up to a 60-degree angle, and it's essentially a perpetual self-driven treadmill. So you're pushing against that thing, working your toes, working your feet, and it absolutely smokes you. And I don't care who you are and how strong you think you are. You start climbing on that thing, within about 30 seconds, you're going to feel it. And it's going to challenge your coordination. But I'm looking at them, I'm going, look, you're just doing a repeated set of step-ups. You're just walking on a treadmill. But now you're trying to hold the rope the same way you do over there and do your pulling patterns at the same time as doing it, right? We're just making you a more proficient mover. We're making you more comfortable in your own body at angles that you wouldn't normally work at. Look, if you're going to go out to Colorado and hike next week, we're going to spend a few sessions working on this thing, because I want your tissues. Yeah, right. But, my clients who are here in South Florida, they don't spend any time above sea level, right? So,
hey, dude, I got two clients from Florida right now that are both coming out here for elk hunts, and one's going to Utah and one's going to New Mexico, and I'm trying to help those guys get prepared. And like you said, it's a whole other thing. And I look at that and I go, man, I feel like I'm a month behind in my preparation, and this is obviously a little bit of a caveat with more of my outdoor kind of passion project with our hunt, hike, harvest stuff. But that's the type of thing where I'm like, boy, I could use that in my life right now. In a really painful way.
It's just, what I enjoy about the process is meeting these people who have come up with these amazing ideas. Some of them are not as useful in the entire grand scope of what that thing brings to the table, but it does bring a certain new change to, the concept of, well, how can we train multiple people in this way on this one piece, right? And how can we completely add a new intensity to it, right? When it comes to the same movement pattern, right? You're basically doing a vertical bear crawl with a rope in your hands, right? So it really just is about adding that value to me as a coach and as a business owner, right? I got to get people in the door and training here consistently, right?
Oh,
I can put
that's
four
another
people on
podcast.
stationary units, have them do their thing there, right? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a whole other podcast altogether. But I can put 4 people on my stationary, cardiovascular and full body training metabolic units over there. They're doing their thing, and I can have 4 people over here on the strength and functionality side doing all the same movement patterns, just in different ways on the quantum trainer or the tank or the surge or the rack here, right?
Yeah.
So from just a versatility perspective of what it allows me to do to get people in the door, program well, and ultimately drive revenue through my business and help me pay my bills, it's just added so much value. And the fun factor is there, so people want to come back. I mean, I have clients who, hey, can I go over to the farm today and get a few minutes in? Go for it. Oh my God, I wish everybody wanted to come out to the farm and train on a daily basis on their own without me. The fact that they feel confident enough to do that, that through my training and through their experience here, they feel empowered to come out and try something and work on something that almost nobody would want to do on their own, right? They want to do it. They love it, right? It's amazing to me. That's the best part.
Well, and I think that's an awesome kind of segue into kind of talking a little bit about your facility. And you said get them through the door. I don't know if there are doors on the place, but you started what I think.
No, there aren't. Well, there's a gate. There's a gate out front.
So as you guys can see, Dan's kind of giving us a little, peep show into his facility there, and it's an outdoor facility that you essentially have built yourself, and we're in a little bit obviously different setting here where I couldn't get away with that in Colorado, although probably a pretty good amount of the time based on what most believe is harsh winters here, even though we don't necessarily have two terribly long periods where we couldn't probably train outside. Last winter was maybe an exception to that, but let's talk a little bit about that in terms of you kind of mentioned going through traditional settings and that type of thing, and to now where you have this facility, as you mentioned, and called it the farm, which I absolutely love, and I'm like, man, that would be really cool. Like, I need another facility where we could do something like that and provide that. I think there's so much, even just ancillary parts to this, which is being outside and fresh air and all these other things. But then you look at the tools that you put in here, and it's like a playground of misfit toys and kind of, talk about how you got to, creating the place that you have. And I think that, as you mentioned, the big part of being a business owner is outside of, having 4 walls where you're like, oh yeah, this is where we train. The business isn't as simple as saying like, oh, we got a place to train, come on in. It's, you have to create a place, a culture, and something where when people come to your place, they're like, yeah, this is where I want to be, and then obviously back that up with what you do and how you do it, which, you've kind of obviously went through that process, and I'm sure there's plenty of growing pains, but talk a little bit about just the genesis of the facility in itself and how it matched up with what we've already talked about, which is, outfitting this place and creating a physical space that now is where you operate on a daily basis.
Yeah. I mean, the truth of the matter is, this little shop of horrors that I've created here was really a complete and total survival mechanism response to COVID. I mean, given the choice, I would have never done this. This was, for me, I don't care what you believe, total divine intervention moment. I would not have believed in a million years that the farm and doing this was exactly what I needed, but it definitely was. I have plenty of confirmation and validation on that now, after having been out here for 2.5 years now, pushing 3 years now. And, it was really, I was training at that, Ramsey Strength Conditioning facility about 6 months before COVID was even a concept in any of our minds. One of my clients had approached me about going out to this farm nearby and, oh, do you want to teach goat yoga out there? I was like, well, I'm not teaching goat yoga. That's not happening. but I do have all this cool equipment that I'm working with. So, let's talk to the farmer, see what happens. And we did. It was a concept that we wanted to kind of think about and run with. And what we thought was full service fitness, health and wellness, outdoors, open air, get fresh air, get sunlight, be able to train outside. And the original, vision really was like a true quintessential barn. And, thinking country living meets, luxury fitness. And, then being able to train with the animals all nearby. So there was some goat yoga going on. But about 2 weeks before COVID hit, she said, hey, I'm ready to pull the trigger on this whole thing. And, we went out, we met with the farmer, and then 2 weeks later, it was like, everybody get the hell out of gyms. You can't be inside gyms. You can't be near each other. You got to wear masks. And literally the day they said that was the day I packed up the mobile fitness trailer, which is now owned by Beaver Fit, who makes my squat rack system now. And we came out here and started training the same day that everybody else had to shut their gyms down. And, meanwhile, while, people are just trying to keep their training sessions up and running and just doing, trying to do whatever outdoor sessions they could do, we had this nice fixed location where everybody could come to us. They, would still get the fresh air, the sunlight, but it was also social distancing friendly for Florida's rules and no masks and all that stuff. So it really became the only possible option for a lot of people to go and get their training done on a daily basis, but also just get some separation from being at home and all of the psychology of being glued to the screen all day and trying to figure out what the heck was going to happen with this whole pandemic deal. And this was really the best possible response for my clients and so many of the other clients. I have several other trainers who are out here that they don't even want to turn back at this point, right? They can't see training anywhere else at this stage of the game. And it's just become this sort of beloved little farm fitness co-op between the farmer running his, school, Montessori schools and home schools, and he's got camps going on. He grows strawberries when it's strawberry season. We just had the sunflowers going. And it's just a really cool environment for people to come out and enjoy good, solid training that just has completely unique tools that you would never even think provide that opportunity. But the training itself and the concept of collaborating with all these different types of companies really was my own version of that collaborative co-op to begin with. It's just expanded to allow more trainers to experience that, allow the farm and the community to experience that. So it's been this really strange evolution for me, because I was totally of the mindset that, right before COVID, I wanted to have a storefront or a warehouse and have, the traditional strength conditioning facility that had my own spin on it. It was going to be this, kinetic training thing, but it's been the farm dojo ever since. And I don't see why I would want to change it at this point. God gave me an opportunity to allow people to connect with their body and their training and, what we're doing to transform that sort of traditional concept of what that looks like. And there's really no reason to stop the route that we're currently on. So it's been a really cool process to see this thing come up from what it was, literally from less than the ground up, because we were in a dirt patch when this whole thing started. And, luckily Robert Hoover, the owner of the farm here, was kind enough to build us the pavilion we're in now. But we started off with tents and picnic table tops lashed together to get us up out of the puddles of water for when the rain was so bad. We were literally in shin deep water because all the weights we were lifting were causing a divot in the ground.
Right.
And it's just been a really, really cool evolution.
Yeah. And, I have always said that within adversity lies opportunity, right? And I think that, just hearing your story and the things like you just mentioned, right, which is, everyone assumes and always sees that, took me 3 years to become, or 4 or 5, or some people 10 years to become an overnight success type situation, where when you look at, what you currently have and the trials and tribulations and as I said, the adversity that kind of in a lot of ways was really forced upon all of us as all of this pandemic piece started, and it really created a lot of challenges for everyone from a lot of different perspectives, but at the same time, I think that now as we're learning to deal with it, we're learning to live with it, we're learning how to kind of continue to maneuver our way back into whatever is, the new normal, as everyone loves to call it. There's been people that have come out of the other side of that have realized that, traditional ways of thinking and traditional ways of operating and doing business and stuff like that, that this forced a lot of us to pivot in directions that maybe we just hadn't thought of. And given the constraints that we had, it really made us think differently, and it made us have to learn ways with which we can still either get the job done, keep our businesses open, pay our bills, all of these things that became, in a lot of ways, survival to some extent. And yet when you turn back now and you look at where you're sitting and what you've grown from there, as you said, like, why would you turn back now and be like, oh, okay, I can go back into, four walls and a storefront, when the reality of it is nobody else has the kind of, facility and environment that realistically you kind of stumbled upon in a lot of ways, that now is like somewhat of an identity to your business and what you're associated with and what you've built. And to me, like, that's amazing. I think we were in similar space where here in Colorado, some of our restrictions obviously shut us down entirely for a short period of time, 6 weeks or so, which made it super challenging. And the room that I'm sitting in right here, we built this specifically because we're like, well, what can we do in the meantime in order to try and be proactive, in order to try and generate opportunities of ways with which we can still make ourselves relevant, and whatever that looks like. And there was some small glimmering pieces where you're like, man, if those things wouldn't have presented themselves the way that they did, we probably wouldn't have done some of the things that we did, and now we come out the other side of it better for it. So that's just awesome to think, as you kind of laid it out, like how all things find a way to work themselves out, and now you're in a position where everything hopefully is a trajectory that continues to grow what you're doing. And obviously, as you can see, it's become successful and will continue to grow in the manner with which you've started to build it. So speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about social media. Let's talk a little bit about the things that you've done there. I think I'm of the in between. You and I have talked about this stuff where I'm old. It's hard for me. I sit back and go, man, I know this is a necessary evil. I got to do a better job. And yet at the same time, it's an education in itself, because if you don't do it right, it doesn't go anywhere. It falls on deaf ears. It never reaches the audience. Talk a little bit about how that process was for you. And as I said, fast forward now, and you're six figures in terms of followers. And obviously that yields a lot when we talk about your affiliate marketing and your association with companies and products and things like that. Speak to that piece to me, because number one, I want to learn. I'm here to learn from guys like you. I'm not the only one. And number two, how do you define and kind of create? Because I think that the way the industry is, there's these kind of little blurred lines and barriers of making sure that it aligns with what you believe in and what you want to do, and you're not selling your soul and that kind of stuff. Talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of it is it's, I get to pick and choose who I work with, how I work with them, and what I want to do with them. And I never approached the equipment side from a perspective of just taking low-hanging fruit and taking whatever was being thrown at me. I've definitely filtered through a lot of the different stuff. But for me, again, it was always about working with people rather than against them, right? If an opportunity presents itself, I at least give myself the chance to do my due diligence and explore that opportunity. I don't just take a closed-minded approach towards poo-pooing something right away just because it doesn't seem like the best opportunity. I'll talk to someone and get a sense of what it is, And I think that having an open mind and a certain level of an open heart to, what someone is experiencing when they bring you their idea or they bring you this concept of cross collaboration, that you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the community to see what it's at least a little bit about, right? So that's what
Sure.
I've done this entire time. And the entire concept of living kinetically came from the mindset of, how do I continue to pursue better, right? And how do I continue to find what's out there and who I can work with and what I can work with together to help build each other up. And that's how this whole network has been built. And the entire concept of my very training has been cross-collaborative and integrative, right? I like to use multiple tools together whenever it makes sense to. So that bled its way directly into social media, because it's a tool that thrives on the concept of people integrating and working with each other and engaging with each other. And if you see it as a tool rather than a necessary evil, then you can use that tool in the right place at the right time in the right way to, continue to market what it is you like to do and how you like to do it. And regardless of what anyone has to say or comment about what it is you're doing at any given time, you're connecting to the community that has that like-minded mindset, right? And so, when I'm creating a workout around a certain set of videos, that gives us all the opportunity to get exposure together, to grow together, and ultimately leverage the algorithm according to what it's designed to do, which is to say, when multiple social medias are coming together to post out all time and use all the same hashtags and all talk about each other at the same time, that helped to put a magnifying glass on who those people are and expand them all together. So it really has all come from that mindset of being willing to work with people and being willing to have a certain level of creativity and ingenuity about how we approach that. And at very least, put something interesting on screen that people want to watch, and it introduces them to that concept and go, oh, well, like, what's that tool all about? Or what's that, method all about? Why is this person doing this? Right. And that's really, how I've approached the entire thing the entire time, to expand the growth of the platform. And that's what we've done to help each other out, even when the algorithms have been changing, right? Because at its core, the algorithm wants you to work together, and it wants you to be tagging each other and playing by all the little rules. And no matter what they're doing on the paid advertising side, no matter what they're doing on the actual nuts and bolts of Instagram or Facebook or what have you, it still relies on that core value of people working together. So when you do that properly, it's a very potent effect, because you go, okay, well, I'm seeing this guy Dan with 50 different companies, and I'm seeing these 50 different companies now with all these other really great trainers. What's going on here? Why are all these people using this? And it starts to feed that algorithmic environment where those people are going to see a lot more of that a lot more often now. And that's the entire way we've approached it the whole time, and it continues to work. So I don't see any reason to stop doing it.
Yeah, so to follow that up, talk to the guy who has 1,500 followers and go, all right. And I'm not about that part of it doesn't necessarily matter to me. I think everyone talks about this popularity contest, and it's not about all that stuff. And when you drive content out, that it will grow. And I know that there's some things you kind of mentioned or alluded to, the the algorithmic piece and that type of thing. I know that consistency is a big part of growing an audience as well. Talk a little bit about maybe what to you were maybe your top 2 or 3 things from a breakthrough perspective. The guy like me who's like, oh yeah, my following isn't big enough, and I'm trying probably meagerly to improve upon some of those things. And then at the same time, as you and I have kind of talked in the periphery, I'm like, I've been home. This will be my fourth or fifth weekend this year, and my travel schedule plus running a business and all these things. Like, how do you, where in your process were those aha moments, maybe a couple of them, where you said, all right, this is working? Maybe what were those specifically? A couple, basic things that the person who wants to try and increase their visibility, impact, that type of stuff could do to start gaining some traction. And then how do you balance out maintaining that you're keeping relevant? I think those are the big things that for me I look at and go, all right, if I'm going to improve, I know I need to do probably 1, 2, 3 things better. What would you say to that person, and how would they go about becoming at least on path to start growing?
Yeah, I mean, just like training, man, do what works. Do what works. You can pretty quickly see what works if you go through any of the fitness folks out there or training people out there who have larger followings, who consistently get great real engagement and all that kind of stuff. If you follow that sort of platform or that sort of method of delivery and continue to just deliver what is your authentic information and your authentic approach towards training and application, you're really playing by the rules while still delivering your style of information. And so, stuff as simple as recording your videos a certain way, right? And in a certain delivery within a certain time frame, right? The algorithm likes that. And if you like the content and it's cohesive with what you're doing, then you'll really see a lot more growth that way. Creating even more visibility for me comes from the concept of collaborating again with those brands that are going to be really effective for you and are ultimately going to help you grow in a bigger and bigger way. Sorry, I got to put my battery on here.
No, you're good.
So check this out. This is, So for me, collaboration comes down to stuff like this, right? I've got my battery pack that helps me keep my stuff up and running while I'm training.
And what is the name of that?
So that's an EcoFlow chargeable battery pack. I don't have electricity out here, right? So
yeah, because I'm looking for something right now
with that brand. Yeah. It's EcoFlow. There's a bunch of different companies that make stuff like that, but I don't have electricity out here. So when I'm going to bring any kind of product or tool into this environment, I go ahead and I talk to that company, discuss what we can do to work together to solve this very legitimate problem that I have, right? I need to plug my phone in because I'm on a podcast, and they need content of how their tool helps people like me do what they need to do. So that's another big concept, right? Especially as a strength conditioning coach, especially as a someone who uses exercise tools all the time. Every single one of these companies needs people who have a valuable voice in the industry talking about their product. Right. So that's now your opportunity to connect with a brand that's maybe bigger than you, or at least as big as you, and you guys can join forces to expand on what the algorithm already does. Right. So if you follow that format of doing what works, working together works, and posting and creating content that looks to what all the biggest people are doing is extremely effective, and the algorithm will naturally start to prioritize that. Right. And ultimately it comes down to consistency, so if you keep doing that stuff, it will start to make a big impact. And the good thing is guys like you in particular already have great connections within the industry with high level people. So when you want to activate something to help you grow your social media, you can do it pretty quickly. Right now it's just a matter of actually dedicating the man hours and the blood, sweat, and tears into it. And let me tell you, the amount of time that I've put into this has been a lot. And, for me, the value of it, though, has greatly outweighed the amount of times I've had to wake up at 3:30 in the morning and get a recording session done before I start my training at 5, you know? So,
Yeah.
but it
And
does
that's the
work.
thing people
And
don't
when you
see,
approach
right?
it that way, yeah, yeah, you know, you think, oh, this guy, what did he, what does he do that's that special? I don't. That's the truth. I don't do anything that's that special. I just do it a lot more often, and I do it very consistently.
Right.
So
That's the big
that's
thing,
been the
you know.
approach the whole time, man. Just keep hammering, keep hammering.
Yeah, you and the other person that I probably put in that category is Vernon Griffith, who I've done some things with Vernon as well, and if you watch the way with which he goes about things and the way that he posts stuff and finding his niche as well. I think that's a big thing that most people don't see, which is for me, I think my challenge, which is no different than anybody else, is that because I think somewhat generationally, I look at myself and I'm like, oh, I'm in my 40s, and for me, I look at my daily schedule, my training. I may have 5, 6, 7 hours of clientele that are coming through the door, and then within that, I get into coaching, and my brain doesn't necessarily always go towards, oh, I should, someone will do an exercise, or we go through a complex of things where, I like to do things in terms of creating exercises that complement the next in clusters and stuff like that typically are based on movements and stuff. And they'll get done with one. I'm like, yeah, I probably, that would have been pretty cool to put out there. And then it's like, I can't relive that one. So we'll just keep moving on. And then, you miss those things. Yeah. And I think that there has to be an amount of presence, because then at the same time, like the part of me that maybe is more personality based is I'm probably not the guy where I'm like going to jump out and be like, hey, check this out, and then I recreate it on my own to, continually do that. And I think that there's finding a balance in there of sharing, and then at the same time, even though a lot of your social media and things like that, yeah, technically they're about you, they're hopefully about your brand, they're hopefully about more of a larger, broader scale, and I think that that's a challenge for some folks, and I think there's a process in that too, where you see folks like yourself that, as you mentioned, I'm getting up at 3:30 in the morning, I start doing this, and I'm creating content, and a friend of mine, he sets aside some time. Uh-oh, did I lose you? Uh-oh, we might have lost him. So we're going to hold tight right here, and hopefully he gets reconnected here. But I'll kind of keep talking. And I think that the thing with that is that you learn how to become better at creating this stuff. That it's harder than you think a lot of times, especially to create content or get in front of a camera and then try to either get a point across or show something that you think will be professional or whatever that might be. And those are things that take practice, just like anything else. You don't learn how to do a clean and jerk, or you don't learn how to become a high-level sprinter by just going out and doing it one time. And to me, I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is to understand. And I've went through processes of even going through YouTube courses and things like that, where I've tried to learn what is that process. And you have to realize that you're going to probably suck for a while, and you're probably going to put out stuff that isn't going to be great. And even if you look through some content that we've done, or even some of our previous podcasts, where I look at it and say, man, if you're paying attention and are critical whatsoever, that you will find that there's an evolution in there. You get better at conveying your message. You get better at how you either deliver content, and then at the same time, even the quality of the content with which you create, the video quality, the audio quality, the editing piece. I've probably spent, as Dan mentioned, countless hours of time now trying to become better at those things. And hopefully there's a point where within this process you not only realize that and those types of things are a profession in themselves. And so I've tried to learn from people that are successful in that regard. I have tried to take in as much as I can in the background when you don't see me doing things like this or training or whatever that might be. I'm spending a lot of time learning and trying to become better at those things, because I realize the value is the end user who's going to see it and who's going to then come back and go, oh, well, I shut that off because the audio quality sucked. I shut that off because he doesn't present himself well enough, or he doesn't enunciate, or he's not very eloquent in how he does it, or he's monotone, or whatever that might be. Those things are truly parts of your growth as well, I think, as a professional, to be able to convey your message well, to do it in a manner that people not only will want to listen to, but then at the same time have a message that either connects to people, that has value to people, and ultimately become either a resource. Obviously, we've seen, especially in the social media environment, the entertainment value of things. People find ways, the viral community and stuff like that. And a lot of people will say, hey, it takes one video, it takes one post that can just ultimately change everything. And unfortunately, a lot of them are funny or humorous or, fails and things like that. But when you look at what Dan has done, there are things in there where you realize that it takes consistency. It takes really trying to grow and work on these things daily in a lot of regards in order to gain the kind of ground that you want, develop the kind of exposure that you want. So let me take a quick look here and see if I missed his call, because I think that he is trying to maybe get through to me here. We'll see if he gets logged back in. Without power down there, I think he is trying to figure out a way to get back online here. So give me 1 second.
Good.
And we're back.
a brief intermission.
Yeah, that's you gotta love technology, and sometimes it doesn't cooperate well with us. But we have managed to recircle the wagons here. As you can see, Dan has a new venue, and looks like probably some power, which is good. But the good news is it allowed us to get a pretty good look at his space at the farm there, which was awesome. And we're going to try and see if we can pick up where we left off. So thanks for carving out a little more time for us.
Man. Oh, look, I think it's exactly situations like this that speak to why it's important that we have a certain level of ingenuity and creativity and stick-to-itiveness, if you will, to make these things happen. We're both pretty busy dudes, and one way or another, we're making it happen.
Yeah. So it's all good. It's been a action-packed week around here, but that's I guess probably no different from most. So when we left off, I know we were talking a little bit about kind of some of your growth as far as the influence of social media and planning and how you kind of start navigating that space. And we asked you a little bit about your thoughts on someone who's maybe trying to grow an audience, someone who's trying to build a presence, and some of those things, which I think are a lot of times where folks don't really know where to start. And I think that can be, as I've found out, I know there's almost a profession in itself to where I think our visibility online and stuff like that now requires some know-how, and at times we even look to outside sources in order to help us with that stuff. Maybe we can pick up there and kind of talk about how much of what you've done in order to kind of grow your kind of presence and your platform, and also are you now at a point where you have some of that automated? Do you hire out any of that? Like what is your method of delivering content and how you maintain? I think frequency is a big part of that, obviously. So go ahead.
Honestly, that's one of those things that I know how to do so well what I do at this point and exactly what I want that I really don't look to turn to anybody else to make my content for me or shoot my content for me unless there's a specific reason one of the companies that I work with want to use their videographer or what have you.
Sure.
It's actually just much easier for me to record it either on my phone or from my camera, port it over to my editor and do it myself because I can do it lickety split. But that also comes down to the fact that I had a genuine interest and I actually like that creative process of creating and editing content. When I'm getting ready to shoot something with the equipment, I already know what I have envisioned and how that's going to map out in the video. So for me, that's very much my process, but I know a lot of people who like to outsource it. I also don't like paying a videographer generally to do what I know I can do. So
Sure. Oh yeah.
being cheap, right? But I mean, certainly if you don't find yourself to be the type of person who loves working with all the technology and understanding how to work the cameras and shift everything over to an editing software, what have you, then and you have the funding to actually allocate that over to a team doing it, then hey, great, it'll
Yeah,
definitely save you some energy and effort and frustration because it can be a frustrating process. But
for sure.
really, the only thing that I do outsource out is my advertising and my targeted marketing. And honestly, unfortunately, most of the social media platforms are pay to play now.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think you see a lot of that now, especially looking online. I know that some of the algorithm stuff and some of the marketing pieces, I just went through it over this last weekend where a lot of that stuff was updated and changed. And you get varying levels of that where people are making a living off of social media. People are making a living off of YouTube, and the generated ads, the targeted ads. People talk about the powers that be and the Googles of the world that are watching over everything we say. And if you talk about shoelaces too much, it's going to start showing up in your Facebook ads and things like that. Like just really intriguing things. Yeah, yeah, right. And
Far
so
worse than you think.
yeah, right. And so, what maybe even diving like a layer down deeper into that, like what have been some of the things that have made your life easier from that perspective? Because I think, part of that evolution as well is finding the right types of tools that you put your content together with and building out, like knowing how to utilize specific systems and platforms and whether it's app integrations or whatever. I know I use a handful of them that are constantly changing and evolving, and you see stuff like, I know now having the dictation and things like that in posts is kind of a new hot thing where a lot of folks are utilizing that because it keeps people there longer and they're wanting to see those things. And maybe talk about some of your maybe top 3 tools that you utilize now that help improve the impact of that, because I think that's the biggest part of it is if you don't have good video quality, if you don't put them in there and generate them in the right context where you engage with people, what are some of the tools that you found for you or maybe some of the most beneficial, what you found to work the best?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, paid advertising definitely. It if it's not part of your marketing structure.
As well, on the other side of that really try and help streamline some of those things. He's back.
There we go.
So yeah, did you get a call or something?
Spam call. Gotta love it.
There you go. Yeah. So go ahead, pick up where you left off. I just kind of did a little bit of filler space there, but talk about your, where you were headed with that.
Yeah. So, like I said, paid advertising is a big side of it. If you have a budget to, actually put that in, Google Ads is a huge one. If you can manage to work with a company, I work with a company called Optio, and they're out of San Diego. One of the reasons that I started working with them is because they work specifically in the startup space and the fitness space. and specifically with innovative fitness tools that are in the startup fitness space, right? So they know that market very, very well. They're not just one of these sort of general social media advertising firms that you probably get a billion messages from.
Right.
They've been collecting data for a very, very long time, and they have a lot of specific data on who the customers are, who the audiences are that are going to engage with specific types of content for specific reasons and from specific places and being specific type of people, right? So that really is like sort of like best kept secret, dirty little secret, great secret weapon is a good company that really knows what they're doing in the targeted demographic marketing realm. And if you don't have one of those companies working with you, then certainly seek one out that you've researched well and have vetted well, or at least look into potentially even some of the softwares that allow for that. And I know like Shopify does a really good job for websites with giving some of that data and help you understand where people are coming from on the internet, where they're going to on your website, and sort of how long it is they're staying, what it is they're doing. It gives you an actual track record of what that looks like, and that's
Right.
incredibly useful data to have to take action on, right? If people aren't engaging with your content, then you have to ask yourself, well, what type of content are they engaging with, right? And I need to keep beating the drum on that. So there's that one. But like free content, man, or free resources that are available. There's tons and tons of TikTokers and YouTubers who stay with their finger on the pulse as far as what it is the algorithms are doing and what you need to be doing to stay up to date with that. And you'll generally get a sense of what trends are going on, right? The task for any content creator is always going to be, how is this something that's true to my message and what it is that I authentically deliver? But then how can I actually, manipulate the nuts and bolts of the algorithm to deliver that message, but within, their rule.
Right.
And then, like I said, the power of working together, man, real, true, grassroots, organic, cross collaboration, and people helping people. When you are a gym owner in particular, right? You've got all these different tools laying around your gym. There's no reason you shouldn't have a relationship with each and every person who makes those tools, and each and every one of the trainers in your facility using them, and each and every one of the clients who are in there using them. Man, encourage. One of the biggest 101 marketing situations is call to action. Call people to action, give them a specific thing you're looking for, a specific request you're looking for, and say, hey, look, we want to build our social media. Go ahead, tag us up. Make a video when you're walking in, make a video when you're walking out, you're doing an exercise or what have you. Just tag us up so we can drop it on our stories. All that type of stuff has a huge impact because it's organic and it works for a reason. People want to see what other people are doing, and they want to be able to interact with it that way.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it too, is, we've talked about, kind of how that layers itself, right? Which is that if you get people that are willing to tag, that are, going to share a post and things like that, and how, we talk, I know a lot of marketing strategists and things like that talk about spheres, right? Like spheres of influence, and utilizing those so that if you add another element to that or another layer to it where, we don't know, the extent of how far some of these other influences can take us based on the fact that the amount of people that walk through our doors, we don't know the 20 or 30 or 40 other people that maybe are close enough to them that go, oh, I didn't know that they go to Fast Performance. I didn't know that they trained at the farm, those types of things. And when you start to build up a little bit more of that, where you get onto people's radar and they start seeing more of what you do, that you're really trying to find low-hanging fruit, right? And you're trying to continually find people that maybe, like, oh, I've heard about that or whatever. And then if they can find a connection in there that is closer to them, the odds are that you're going to gain one or two here and one or two there, and that the amount of influence that comes via that collectively can really start to make an impact. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's where it becomes the power of the algorithm, right? It's the interactions we're having here that are real interactions, and begin to grow into the social media algorithms. That comes from the fact that you develop a good relationship with people, and they want to talk about you. They want to show other people that they're part of what you're doing, right? I mean,
right.
I was recently contacted. Well, you just this week. Hey, you know a guy in Miami?
Yeah,
close to Miami, right?
Yeah.
For picking up actual training clients and actually working with people to help people in the real training environment, and that comes from relationships that were developed either here or through interactions on social media. I had something similar from David Weck, and people who want to do that, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that it works because it happens to me weekly, daily, hourly, and I've almost completely relied on social media to build those interactions up, and honestly, a lot of my initial interactions were really more like putting companies on the spot. I flat out just called them, just doing stuff that other people I knew were not willing to do. Most people will stop at an Instagram message. It doesn't get answered, so they don't, there it goes. I guess I'm not going to get that answer, right? You know what I'll do? I'll tag that one of that person's post as a story on mine and tag them up in it. Much more likely to get an interaction from them that way, right?
Sure.
I can't tell you how many times that's worked. And it starts a conversation, or just flat out calling a company when they really don't expect to get a call from someone who found them on social media and actually wants to talk about doing something legitimate. And then of course you have to actually follow up, number one. Number two, make good on what it is you say you're going to do. But that's
sure.
Professionalism, which not everybody has, right? Be a professional.
Right.
You say do it, show up and make it happen. But yeah, it really does come from at the core that real, genuine, authentic interaction that you get with people, and then how it begins to present outwardly, and just is what your social media begins to become, and that should all be integrated into your website anyway, which should then be feeding out traffic to Google, and and basically letting people know who you are, where you are, how they can find you. And I mean, because of what I've done so much time doing on social media, that feeds back over to my website, which it lets people know where I am on Google, and get the random phone calls from people. Hey, I saw you on YouTube. You train in Davie? Yeah. All right. Come on. Go train. Right. And that's the beauty of what it does, is it does legitimately give you the power to put your marketing in your own hands, and and market the way you like to, and develop a real sense of what your voice is, so that people know how to find you, who you are, and what it is you exactly do. You don't have to do anything crazy or weird or stupid to go viral. You really just have to understand that those systems all work together to help people find you. And when you do it that way, it does actually have a legitimate effect.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about the things that have worked and the things that you've kind of, evolved into as far as, kind of gaining ground. Let's talk on the opposite end of that scale. What are things that you've either experienced or things that you've learned or seen other folks maybe do where you go, yeah, that's probably been either a good lesson to, learn from, or that you see as common maybe errors in how people go about, maybe growing a better presence?
Yeah, I mean, again, it really depends on what it is you're trying to communicate, who it is you are and want to be, so to speak, on social media. I mean, one of the big things that I see really, really commonly is, your generally how you set up your profiles and how you establish that footing foundationally of what your various social medias look like, and is that cohesive with your brand, with the message your brand is trying to send, who you are as a person and coach, whatever your business actually is. If it's not consistent across the board, then it looks like it's just kind of a mishmash of stuff. And a lot of times, people use their business social media as also their personal social media, which I don't recommend. Right? You might let a couple of like personal tidbits leak into your business social media, and that can be actually a really good strategy for like showing people, hey, like I'm a real person. Like this isn't just this perfectly polished business that's run by a company of 500 employees. No, me and 3 other people making this happen here, right?
Right. Yeah.
That kind of stuff. But when it's like your trash can, right, or a picture of what you like on your TV, right? That's the kind of stuff that it's so far off brand. It's your messaging that more often than the algorithms are, well, what's this? This doesn't make any sense, right? And then again, there's no cohesiveness when you set up stuff like your website has all the branding and it looks the way it does, but then your social media looks nothing like that. It's not even identifiable. There's a legitimate psychology to the identifiability of your logo, your motto, all those different things being integrated into one sort of cohesive system that feeds each other. And when you're inconsistent about that, it shows, and it comes off as professional. If what you want to have is a sort of colloquial, very open type of brand where it feels like people are living in your house with you, then fine, but make that consistent, right, across the board. And that works well, but what doesn't work well is when you're just all over the place and you're trying to do the next viral thing or the stuff that just seems popular right now just because that's what I see doesn't work very well, and it comes off as disingenuous and fake, quite frankly. That's what people just don't like, right? Doing it for the gram.
Right. Yeah, we joke about that all the time.
So just silly and crazy, and that's fun, right? You want to be funny, or you want to be whatever. You want to be part of the trend that's going on, but at the same time, if you're doing that stuff consistently and it looks almost like you're really just kind of stretching for reach, then it's going to come off that way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that a lot. I think those are some of the battles that a lot of people face, which is you're trying to determine like, oh, my starting point is, what is my identity? What is my message? And I think that even from a strategic perspective, a lot of times if your goal is that you're going to grow and you're going to improve and all these other things. And I have kind of these lists of things, whether they're written down or in my head, where I kind of always think about like, what do I want people to either see, or how do I want to convey that, and making sure that it's not all over the board, right? Like one, I'm not in there just being like aloof and ridiculous. And then the next thing I'm like, oh, hey, today let's talk about the stretch shortening cycle and here's how we influence it, whatever. And they're like, I don't know which person you are. And, I think that some of those things can be challenging too, just from the perspective of, trying to make sure that if you're doing it for the goal of, utilizing this platform, whatever that is, to professionally, enhance your ability that hopefully has some type of connection to your business or your brand or whatever, is that it's a constant, process to ensure that you maintain that level of consistency, and that when people come to see you, that they know kind of what to expect, right? And I think that if you look at stuff that you post, there's a bit of a theme in that, I don't ever see something that you put out there and I go, whoa, what the heck was that? It's more of here's another, option. Here's another product. Here's another, video that you're producing that has some type of consistency, that there's a thematic delivery of some of that stuff. And all of that takes work. It takes pretty consistent effort to accomplish. And, at the same time, there's a lot of little things that you have to do right and you have to do routinely in order for that stuff to get, that impact to the end user in the way that's going to achieve what your mission is.
Yeah, for sure. And I can say with all honesty and connection to what it is I've actually done to get here, that again, it comes down to deciding what those things are going to be, and kind of honestly guess and checking what actually works. People are going to connect with me as a coach who does the types of content that I do differently than somebody else, right? And they see what someone else doing it and they might go, nah, that's not for me. Or they see somebody else do it and they go, hey, I like what that guy's doing better. Right?
Sure.
I know I've tested this a billion times, right? So like you'll see people do 10 different slides of individual exercises, right? Those posts 100% bomb for me every time. Every time, right? And they're a huge time suck for me. So between, sometimes training 10, 12 hours a day, plus all the other stuff, people prefer my short videos. I use the long versions of those videos that were recorded during a training session of my own, where I was using my training time to just get different tidbits of the exercises that I'm doing for that day in my actual training session. And that longer form will end up on a platform like YouTube, where people do engage for a longer period of time, versus Instagram, where I know for a fact they're gonna watch anything that I do that's a minute or less. And if I'm doing more than that, it's a waste of my time and theirs. So I don't really go that route. I might do it here and there just because it's something that I have time for or what have you, or I want to trickle in a little bit more of that in-depth knowledge and show people that's actually something I'm capable of. But at the same time, if I'm the type of coach who's selling comprehensive knowledge on the back end somewhere on my website, what have you, more in-depth programs, then I don't necessarily want to be giving away all the secret sauce on social media, right? And there's that free form content, but then there's also that premium content concept too, right? And it's not about just cooking just for the sake of upselling. There's legitimate knowledge that I've taken 11 years to develop, and that's the type of stuff that I'd like to monetize. So I do that in a separate space, and I use something like Instagram as my primary platform for creating interest, where that drives people to the website to buy this or that, go to an app that I'm working with where a program is available or what have you. That's what I know works well for me. And again, that's where the demographic driven marketing and working with some kind of company or some kind of software that allows you to figure that out is really helpful. I wish I had known how to do any of that properly from the beginning, because it would have saved me a lot of time.
Yeah. So I think the last thing that I want to touch on here before we kind of wrap up is, you just kind of started to mention that, which is, you can put out a lot of things, you can put out a lot of content, you can get a lot of followers and those types of things through being consistent and, maybe making that delineation of like, this is how I want to convey my message. And this is how we're going to kind of portray, specific videos and to drive engagement. But I think the biggest thing is, how do we convert? Right. And what have you found is the best method, or what have you found are the most effective ways that you then take that, which is, hey, let me show you this new product. Let me show you, something that I'm doing. Let me show you someone I'm working with and what have you. And I know for you, like affiliate marketing side and some of those things where, a lot of folks, can put in a ton of work. And, even like I get this a lot from my wife, who's like, okay, but like, is it making me money? Right? Like, how much money is it actually making? And how much time are you allocating to this? And how does that, when did you start to see, or how did you start to see conversion happen based on some of the things that you were doing? Like, were there specifics to that where you go, okay, this is actually starting to work.
Yeah. And again, that goes right back to that foundational concept of making sure it's all properly integrated, that it is creating a direct path to whatever it is you want to monetize, right? And that's going to be as quick and easy and efficient to achieve as possible. Luckily, all of the platforms basically have their own shops built into them now. And there's, really simple tools, stuff like Linktree. Instagram just updated its profile feature so that you can put multiple links in your profile. So, any companies that you're working with where you're an affiliate, or any products that you're personally selling from your website, or points of sale to sign up for actual training sessions or what have you, you want that to be the fastest, most instant gratification based clicking process possible. The less clicks, the better. If they could click one time and buy your program, that's what you wanted to do, right? That's exactly why Amazon is so successful with the buy it now feature. How much garbage you bought now on Amazon that you didn't need at all, just because all you had to do was this one time, right? So, there's an actual legitimate psychology to that, and it works. But if you're the type of person who wants to make sure that you're selling something that actually provides value to people, then all paths need to lead to that point as quickly and efficiently as possible. Setting up your website to be integrated with your social media properly is huge. Making sure that your business is readily and visibly available on Google. You have a business address, and business reviews that are coming through from your actual legitimate customers. That all puts you at the top of the priority list for trying to find you. And then again, making sure those points of sale are readily available as quickly as possible from whatever avenue you're coming from. So all of those platforms need to have some kind of hyperlinkage that's direct to the point of sale, right? And then that point of sale has to be pretty easy to work with too. User-friendly, user experience. Psychology is massive in this industry. Anything that's dealing with the digital space and someone looking at a screen and clicking away, that has to be a really, really simple process. That's why stuff like Apple Pay is so effective and PayPal is so effective, because it takes zero time to make it happen. If I gotta go find my wallet, go type in my code,
oh yeah, right, for sure,
I'm gone. So that really is probably the most practical piece that I can give anyone who actually wants to monetize, whatever way that monetization is happening. You have to be able to get to that thing you're going to buy as the customer as quickly as possible, be able to put that money down. I mean, that's just how
exactly. That's cool. Well,
it really does come down to making sure that foundation is there. And if you don't have a website, you should have a website, and make sure that all of your social media is connected to it so people can get there quickly to buy whatever it is you're selling, or set up your Instagram shop, right?
Right.
Your Amazon affiliate store, set up your Facebook store, whatever it's going to be. Make sure that that's where people are headed to go and, buy whatever it is you're selling, what you're putting down.
100%. So no, that's awesome. Well, and we will make sure that we include a lot of this stuff in the notes, in the show notes at the end. If you haven't checked out Dan and Live Kinetically, he's not super hard to find. If you go to his Instagram and all of his social media outlets, we'll provide links to those things in the show notes as well. Please be sure to leave comments and things like that for us, because we obviously love to get those things from you folks. Go out and check out the things that Dan does. He not only does he provide so much content and education and things like that, he does such a phenomenal job of connecting products and things that are out there, just on the cutting edge of what's going on in the industry, and then provides a lot of that value back to folks through discounting and providing ways with which we can integrate these things into training. And so I highly recommend that you guys go do that. I super appreciate reconnecting. It's taken us a little while between our schedules and all that stuff. We got a few more conversations we got to have offline that we'll continue on. And obviously we could probably continue for a few more hours if we wanted to just chat, but we can of course do that in another episode if we so choose. And we appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks so much for your time, dude. And hopefully we'll somewhere along the lines of all of our travels and trials and tribulations, we're going to run into each other here again soon.
Well, I think I have good reason to get out to. How far are you from Denver?
I'm in Denver, dude. I'm
perfect because I just started with a company called Climber. They make like a specialized Versa climber, like the Peloton of
okay.
So might have some good reason to be out there pretty soon. Come see you. If not, hey, I'm sure you don't need a good excuse to get out to Miami. So
hey, I don't, but what I need to do is find the time to get to Miami. So
hey, man, we'll be there for the TSAC this week, man. That'd be a heck of a treat for me to sit in and be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, well, we'll find some ways to get that done, and keep doing your thing. I appreciate your time, your insight, and we'll definitely do it again. I look forward to kind of continue a lot of different conversations that I've enjoyed being able to grow over the past year of us kind of finding a lot of common threads that I think if we keep working on them, there'll be opportunities that will continue to grow between both of us too. So, man, keep rocking.
Yeah, Joel. Yeah, man, it's an honor and pleasure is all mine. I really appreciate the time you've taken to do this. So,
have a good weekend. Appreciate it.
You too, man.
All right. Bye.